Hello and welcome to the Sewing Studio. Today is the last month of our mystery postcard, and you can see how these have all gone together. And I've created this little wall hanging with my postcards. It may be that you want to create a quilt, or you just want to give them individually as cards, as gifts, whatever. But I'm going to show you how to put this together to make a little wall hanging like I've got here. So what I've done is I've chosen a background fabric that has no pattern and is very neutral, because there's lots of colour going on here. So I wanted it to be something that was background and let the postcards speak for themselves. So I've used a Bella Solid, and this is called Fog. And I've also done my binding. Now I've done this in a multicolour because when I was putting it together, I kept getting out different fabrics, and I thought, do I want it red, blue, black, green? And I just couldn't make a decision. So in my stash, I found this lovely multicoloured stripy fabric, and I do love a stripy binding. So that's what I've chosen. So now I'm going to show you how to put it together, and you can see that they're all slightly different and they're slightly offset. And because there's a few joins in this, I've actually quilted it fairly heavily because I wanted that to hide some of the joins. So looking at it from a distance, you can't see these different joins. So we're just going to go over to the cutting table now, and I'm going to talk you through how to put this together so you can make a little hanging. Before I do that, I'm just going to show you that I've attached a little sleeve on the back here, and we do have a tutorial on our channel how to make a hanging sleeve if that's what you want to do. So let's go back over to the cutting table and I'll show you how to put it together. So what I meant to say to you was that my little wall hanging measures 25 inches by 34 inches. And so what I did was I took all the blocks and I laid them out. And if you remember, I said to you before about not doing the embellishments because it makes life difficult. Let me show you, for example, if I had got the rabbit's tail on here already, when I'm sewing these together, that's the sort of thing that would get in the way. And the good thing is you can do your embellishments at the end and you can stitch those on, and that would form some more quilting to hold all your layers together. So the first thing I did was I laid them out, and I've laid them in the order that I wanted them. So January, February and March, and then April, May, June. So what I did, I wanted them all the same size, as in if this measures 5 by 7, so this is 7 here, 5 here, and this one's 7 here, 5 here. I wanted to make them all the same. So what I would say is measure your blocks and decide what size you're going to have them. So if you want to leave them at 5 by 7, which is what we started with, that's absolutely fine. But if they're not all the same, at this point you would need to trim them down so that they are all the same size. So if we're working with 5 by 7, what we're going to do is we're going to take a 2-inch strip and we're going to sew that on to our January block. And then with our February block, we are going to take a 1-inch strip and we're going to sew that on. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to make them all the same height. So that will work if your postcards are 4 inches by 6 inches. It will still work. You'll still need 2 inches on either side and 1 inch on that one. And when I've done a few of these, I'm just going to stitch these together, and then I'm going to talk to you about the sashing in between. So I'm just going to the machine. So 2 inches on our portrait, sorry, 1 inch on our portrait, 2 inches on our landscape. And if you did that with all of your postcard blocks to start with, and then you can lay them out. So you can see that I've joined the 1 inch strip to these blocks and the 2 inch strip to this size block. So what we're going to do is we're going to just lay them out in the order that you want them. So I'm going to put that one there, and that one there. And what I did to start with is I laid all 12 out and then worked out how big I wanted the pieces in between. So the strips in between these are 2 inches wide. So this was, the first two were fairly straightforward, the first 2 rows, because I've made these the same height. So the strips here were 2 inches, and then the strip through here was 2 inches. When I got to the next block, let me just show you on the quilt. So the next one, we've got a portrait, a landscape and a portrait. So to make this work, I had to have a 3 inch strip between the blocks. So if you imagine doing it in 2 sections, so what I did was I joined these and I did the 2 inches in between, and that was 1 row. I did these with 2 inches in between, and that was my next row. And then on my 3rd row, I took my, we'll use this one as an example, I took my portrait block, which was the beach huts. Then I took my landscape block, which was the agapanthus, and then I took my portrait block, which was the tree, and I put a 3 inch strip between those, and then that measured the same as the first 2 rows, and then the bottom row with the pumpkin is the same as the first 2. Now it depends how you've done your blocks. You may have done some of these as landscape. So for example, you might have done your beach huts as landscape, in which case it would work out differently. So I'm only giving you the measurements of how I did it. So if I just say again that these ones all had an inch border, these had 2 inches, the strips between were 2 inches. Let me just double check that. Yeah, they were. And then the strips between these were 3 inches. And that was all I did, and I joined them up. So let's just go back to looking at the one that's been joined. So you can see here that there are a few joins that you wouldn't see in traditional patchwork where you would have your blocks all meeting up. But this is patchwork. I made it up as I went along. And so what I did was I just did a bit more quilting over these. And when you look at it from a distance, you can't actually see all those joins because of the quilting. So I'd encourage you to do a bit of heavy quilting over it. And you really just want your little postcard blocks to stand out and be the feature. So from what started as an experiment, and I made it up as I went along, I'm really pleased with the outcome. So I hope you managed to get yours put together for Christmas. And all that remains for me to say is Merry Christmas. And I look forward to seeing you next time in the sewing studio.